Hello, my name is David Voyles. I'm a Senior Technical Evangelist at Microsoft based out of Philadelphia. My role has been working with students and startups largely on the East Coast, but when it comes to gaming, I kind of work all over the country. I spend a lot of time going back and forth between the East Coast and West Coast, either to Seattle or Redmond, where our headquarters are, and also for San Francisco at the Game Developer Conference, which I just returned from. It's an exciting time to be here talking at your conference because of the new changes that we have coming for Xbox, Xbox Live, and even more so Windows 10 for independent gamers and developers. So what I'm going to cover today is a bit of information about how to write your games for many of our platforms. First, I'll discuss the two different approaches that previously existed for Xbox 360 as well as Xbox One, as well as our new approach, which you found out quite a bit about during GDC and we'll learn more about at Build later on this year in May. So with that in mind, let's get started. So Microsoft's initiative for Xbox Live indie games really began around 2007 on the Xbox 360. At that time, we were looking to get smaller developers on board with our platform instead of just leaving it open to the larger AAA companies like the Activisions of the world. So with this in mind, Microsoft created a framework called XNA, and it was written in C#. What that did was wrap all of your C++ code and allowed developers to have almost full access to the 360 in the C# language that we had created several years before. It was called, at that time, Xbox Live Creators Club, and it was a small program. It was very affordable, cost about $200 or $100 each year for developers to get started, but they could take a retail Xbox 360, bring it into their home, and start programming on their computer and deploy and have games up and running there. The other approach right now is the ID at Xbox program on Xbox One. It is for independent developers who do not need a publisher. So that is, you could be a small startup, perhaps even a student or someone working in the comfort of their own home. You can apply for this program and you can release games on our latest console. So let's dive into that just a little bit. Like I mentioned before, we started with the Xbox 360. Again, that was the XNA framework using C#. And in 2007, it was called the Creators Club. It was certainly a new initiative. Nothing like that had really existed before. Sony had tried to do something similar on the PlayStation 1, the platform called PSX, around 1997. It didn't really take off because at that point there just weren't a large number of smaller independent game developers. But with the 360, we're trying to essentially make it the Trojan horse, the central part of your living room experience. So with that, XNA opened up an entirely new world of game development to startups. So nowadays we have things like Unity, which makes it far, far easier to get into game development. Again, that's also done in C#, so there are a lot of parallels there, but XNA was simply a framework, very loose, very small. It didn't include much, but it was exciting to see how much we could actually get done with it. And that's how I got started into games. I had gone to the Game Developer Conference in 2010 after university 1 year, and I realized that this was the place to be. This is where all the excitement was. And this provided an outstanding entry point to get into game development and into the scene. So at the time, 2007, 8, 9, 10, for XNA, we had hundreds, if not thousands of developers in these forums every single day asking questions. How do I get on board? How do I make my game? Will you review my game? It was an exciting time. So you could test on your own console, and when you're ready to publish, 24 hours later, it'd be pushed to the store. So they still exist on the Xbox 360 dashboard. You can find them under Xbox Live Indie Games tab. Now if you're going to buy a indie game on Xbox 360, or Xbox One I should say, it's very front-facing. It's at the front of the dashboard under the ID'd Xbox games, but they have far fewer games, and it is curated. With 360, you had to kind of dig around a little bit to find some of these games. That's not to say that games weren't selling, as several sold millions and millions of copies, but it was a bit more difficult to find. So this time around with Xbox One, we're trying to really alleviate that and make it much easier. So let's go to the natural progression from 360 to Xbox One. With Xbox One, we realized how important it was for developers, or independent developers, to get on board with us. They had making outstanding game street, and they could take the risks that the larger AAA companies could not. So we started to build the Xbox One with that in mind. We also opened up many more middleware frameworks as well as languages you could use to make games for it. So if you're going to build a game for Xbox One right now, you have a couple of paths you can take. You can use C++, and with C++ you can write your game with DirectX 11. But even now, we just recently announced DirectX 12, so you can take your game to the next level and use that. But not everyone is a fan of doing very, very low-level programming and building frameworks and engines from scratch. Therefore, the rise in popularity of Unity, you can also create a Unity game and bring it over to Xbox One. Moreover, recently announced support for Unreal Engine. So Unreal Engine 4 will work across Windows 10 as well as Xbox One. In fact, there are some games out there using it right now. Dark Dreams Don't Die, so D4 is one of the first, and even UDK, Unreal Engine Xbox One, as we saw with Crimson Dragon, a launch title. So in looking at slide 5, we can see all the available services that we have for Xbox One, at least at the moment. So on the left-hand side, you see we have cloud services. That's things like Azure. So you can connect to our Azure mobile services and have things like leaderboards, push notifications if you're trying to also tie into smaller mobile titles. We also have cloud saves, and I don't know if you noticed, but during GDC, the Game Developer Conference we just came back from, we're also exposing a lot of these live services to Windows 10 developers, which I'll touch base on a little bit later. At the top here, we see the different languages you can use to write games. So you have HTML5 apps, so actually it's HTML5 and JavaScript. So we've had support for that for quite a long time now. Actually, it came when the launch of Xbox One, and many, if not most, of the applications you see on Xbox One are actually done using this. So Netflix and Hulu, they're all just HTML5 and JavaScript apps because that's what many of the media companies were requesting. They found it easiest to work with, and it also allowed them to take many of the applications they've written on other platforms and bring them over to our platform as well. I mentioned a few minutes ago that you can also use DirectX or C++ to write your games. So that seems to be a very popular tool for many people. And then I don't have it listed, but we also have middleware. So like I mentioned before, things like Unity, Unreal Engine, but also several developers using GameMaker. I'm sure more pieces of middleware will come in the future. And as it does, you can feel free to request or shoot us an email at ID@Xbox requesting specific pieces of middleware tools that you would like to use or see available on the platform. Finally, a new note, you'll see I have a box that's blue. It says XAML apps, that's C#, Visual Basic, C++. So Visual Basic will not work, but C# will finally work. A large criticism we received at first when we launched Xbox One was that we didn't have support for C#. And like I mentioned earlier, XNA was a C# gaming framework. So that was a difficult spot. There are a number of reasons why it wasn't there, but we announced at Build last year, so April of 2014, that C# was coming to the Xbox One, and at some point there will be an announcement for when you will actually be able to write your C# applications. So XNA developers, fear not, at some point it will actually work. So going back to slide 4, I'll talk a little bit more about what we can offer on Xbox One now. This platform is open for developers who apply through the ID@Xbox program. That's independent developers at Xbox. So to get there, you can go to xbox.com/dev. And the portal looks a little bit different today than it did about a month ago. Previously, you would go and you'd apply through the program. You'd go to the bottom of the page and see a small application form, and you enter information like your developer name, where you're located, titles you've worked on, maybe a link to YouTube, or even a link to give a build about what you're currently building. We received overwhelmingly large number of applications, so it's taken some time to sift through, but the program has gone through sweeping changes in the last year or so, and has really done a great job of onboarding developers. So at the moment we have over 1,000 developers on board, and each of those have received at least 2 dev kits. So if you come on board, they receive 2 developer kits free of charge, which is a huge change from what the model used to be. So if you were a developer making XBLA, Xbox Live Arcade games, on the 360, those developer kits would cost thousands of dollars. So it's a very welcoming model for smaller companies and studios to get brought on board, considering that they don't have to pay anything to foot the cost of this. Chris Charla, the director at ID at Xbox, gave a great talk at GDC this week where he goes into great detail about his program that he's put together, about the developers who are on board, how they're showcasing what they're doing. You can find all of that on Channel 9 and look for the tag GDC, the Game Developer Conference, where he has about a 30-minute talk highlighting some of the developers and partners we're working with, as well as outlining the program a bit more. So we have over 1,000 developers on board, and we're onboarding more each and every day. And like I mentioned earlier, your best bet for getting on board is to write for Windows 8 first and then bring it over. This way the team has an opportunity to see what you're actually working on, and a good idea for a proof of concept. It makes it very difficult to decide who to give hardware to if you don't have a track record or you've never worked on anything before. So the developers who are actively working on Windows 8 games, which we are confident will work on our platform, are generally the ones who we can easily take a look at and say, yes, let's start looking in that direction. Like I mentioned earlier, middleware tools like Unreal 4 and Unity make it extremely easy to come on board. So far, we've launched over 40 titles on the platform. You can find them all today on the Xbox Live dashboard. And we're adding more and more by the week. So I had to be careful when putting the slide deck together because previously we didn't make any announcements about Windows 10. But now there's much more that we can talk about. So when you used to go to the xbox.com/dev portal and apply, you had one option that was ID at Xbox, which is our curated program for getting developers on board. Now when you apply, you also have the opportunity to ask for Xbox Live for Windows 10. So what that means is all the features that came to Xbox Live on the console, things like achievements, leaderboards, gamer score, matchmaking, that were just available to the console will now be made available to Xbox Windows 10 developers. That means those will work across things like your phone and even your PC now. Also, they'll allow opportunities for developers to have cross-buy purchases. So you can buy a game on Xbox One, and if you have the opportunity to opt in and tell your gamers, okay, you bought it here, I will reward you and give you a copy on Windows 10. Or perhaps you want cross-play in that you want your Windows 10 gamers to have the opportunity to play with your Xbox One gamers. Well, that's possible now as well. We had tried that briefly with Games for Windows Live. It was essentially our way of trying to get Xbox Live onto the PC many, many years ago, and a title called Shadowrun actually used that and worked out really successfully. So now we're trying to bring that back. So for right now, it's going to be curated, and it's going to be the same process as applying for ID at Xbox. But in the future, we would like to open it up to all developers to have this opportunity. With that in mind, we also have the Universal App Platform, or UAP, which is coming out for Windows 10. So UAP allows you to easily port your games across all of our platforms. That's the full stack that runs Windows 10. So that's everything from a phone, a phablet, tablet, Windows 10 laptop, desktop, and Windows 10 will even run on devices such as the HoloLens and IoT, or Internet of Things. So it's great to see how much breadth and scale we'll have across the platform. If you're interested in that, again, you can go and apply through the ID at Xbox program, or perhaps you're already in the ID at Xbox program. In that case, if you want to have access to live services on Windows 10, you have to go back and apply again, but request the Windows 10 path. This is a huge change from what we had in the past. On XNA for the 360, we didn't have access to any of these services, and by far the most requested thing we had heard was, I want gamer score, achievements, things of that nature inside games. That's what gamers were telling us. So we listened, and we're finally giving you access to all of these things. So it's an exciting time. It's very exciting for Microsoft to be doubling down on gaming and going in that direction. In terms of what you will have available to you on the platform, if you use a middleware provider like Unity or Unreal, you will have full access to the Xbox One itself. So you'll get full power to everything. If you decide, on the other hand, to go with the UAP, Universal App Platform, you'll be able to use what's called the shared partition on the Xbox. So that means you're not going to get all of the resources, but it will allow your game to snap in the background or easily go to the side, or people will be able to snap while they're playing or watching something else. So titles such as Threes and Nutjitsu are both using this right now. So you get a fewer resources with the Xbox One. So you'll have 50% of the GPU, 1.5 gigabytes of RAM, and roughly 4 cores of the CPU to work with, which is quite a bit, especially when you're coming from something like a Windows 8 a laptop or tablet, or even a phone. So this will also allow you to do is more easily scale your game across all these devices. So if you decide to go the exclusive route and you want all the resources, that's fine. You can deploy middleware that way. Or if you want your game to port more easily across all of our platforms, well, essentially you have one solution, but you're building for all the different platforms, you can go to the Universal App Platform. We'll have more to announce about that at Build. But again, for more details about what these services offer, about ID at Xbox, again, I strongly urge you to go to channel9.com and take a look at all of our GDC videos over there. So now we've built a game for the console. What about secondary services, right? How do you get your users further engaged? So I'm going to skip ahead a couple of slides and we'll take a look at that. On slide 6, you can see I bring up SmartGlass. So SmartGlass is a second screen experience that works on a number of mobile devices, such as Windows Phone, Windows 8, both laptop, desktop, tablet, iOS, and Android. Now previously, the programming model for that was HTML5. So you'd open up your SmartClass app, which you download from any of those stores, the iOS App Store, Google Play, or Microsoft Store, and you would have a shell which would run our SmartClass app. Inside of that, you would have your HTML5 hosted experience. Now, we've decided to open it up so you can have your native applications on these devices communicate with the Xbox as well. So SmartGlass essentially provides two-way communication between the second screen device and your Xbox console. So one of the things I'm highlighting here is Madden. So one of the ideas we first came up with when coming up with SmartGlass was the ability to play call or see overviews of what's happening on the field through SmartGlass. So you can play on one screen, and on this other screen you can do things like select plays without your opponent being able to see them as they sit side by side. A lot of media applications are taking advantage of this. So for example, you can have a media application like Hulu, Netflix, or Comcast, and you can browse their video on demand catalog on your second screen device without interrupting anything that's going on the main screen. So allow me to browse for videos, press play, choose to deploy to the Xbox, and now I can pause, fast forward, scrub, get a timeline of what's going on. So it really encourages developers to get more engaged as to what's happening. And Dead Rising 3 actually did a fantastic job of utilizing the SmartGlass application. So I implore you to go check that out when you have an opportunity. So skipping ahead one slide, I'm on slide 7. Again, this works on Xbox 360 or Xbox One. You can download the SmartGlass app from the store on any of your mobile devices. Each application, or each console I should say, is going to have a different application. And communicates over the local Wi-Fi connection within your home. So when you turn your Xbox, they're going to pair it with your SmartGlass application one time, and then it knows anytime you turn on SmartGlass, it's paired with that Xbox, and they can communicate back and forth. It's great for, again, media applications, so perhaps you don't want to look for your gamepad or you can't find your gamepad. That's fine. You can turn on your phone, and you can have all the buttons that are on your gamepad just on your SmartGlass controller. Additionally, what if you want something like a keyboard? You want to be able to type text or search for something through text or send a message to someone on Xbox Live? Not a problem. Open up SmartGlass and your keyboard for your native device will actually pop up, and so you can send messages back and forth that way. A very good use case that I saw for SmartGlass a couple of years ago, this was showed off at GDC 2013 by Phil Profit. He was a member of the ATG team on Xbox. He was working with Team Ninja on Ninja Gaiden 3. So this is what got me excited for SmartGlass and had me sold on it. While playing Ninja Gaiden, you have what's called rich presence. And what that means is you're exposing to Xbox Live where a player currently is in a game. So for example, if I'm on stage 3 and I'm at the clock tower, I can then tell that to Xbox Live, and other gamers can see where I am. So it's completely opt-in. It's up to the developer to do this, but a great use case for it would be something like a strategy guide. So as he was playing through this game, we got to see this in real time. On one side of the screen, we had SmartGlass. On the other side, he had his Xbox app. So he's playing, and he would get to a part like the tower on Ninja Gaiden on stage 3, And as I was doing that, he would basically build a string, and this string would be parsing YouTube in the background and keep pulling up walkthroughs or strategy videos for this game. So it would look something like Ninja Gaiden 3 plus whatever the rich presence was, so Clock Tower Stage 3 plus walkthrough, and you keep seeing it cycle through these videos as you're moving throughout the world. Fantastic way to add a richer, more deep experience for the gamers that you're working with. Again, SmartGlass is completely free. If you apply for the ID Xbox program, again, you can take a look at it. We were showing this off on the developer floor as well. So quite a few experiences and things for developers to work with now. And also provides a far more engaging experience than someone just sitting there idle with a gamepad in hand. We also have the Connect. Connect works very well across both Windows 8 and Xbox One. So the Xbox 360 used Connect 1, a more toned down version of Connect, and Xbox One and PC now both have SmartClass 2, Connect 2. Furthermore, we now have an adapter so you can go back and forth between the two platforms. So for example, you can buy a Connect 2 on Windows 8 and then plug in this adapter so it then goes to Xbox One. Recently released in the last few months, but allows for more interoperability between the two. And we've seen quite a few developers actually taking advantage of that. Other things you might want to add to it are the ability to have voice recognition, or NUI. That's natural user interface. And that allows people to either interact with the game through motion controls and hand gestures. So again, D4, Dark Dreams Don't Die, was an outstanding use case for this. But also you can have things where you can call for support within the game, and you can have characters or minions or players come in and help you out based on what's happening. A very good use case I saw for this was in Aliens Isolation on Xbox One. So as your character is trying to evade this alien, you can do something like hide in the locker. And you can see through the locker, the alien is kind of walking around and looking for you. So with the Connect on, you have the opportunity to flip this switch back and forth. And what that'll allow it to do is to listen for you in the background. So if you make a lot of noise while the alien is looking for you, it suddenly detects where you are in the game, and it knows to go after you and find you in the locker. Again, another way to really make an immersive experience that you can't really find on other platforms. So certainly consider SmartGlass and Connect when building your games. And all of this will work on Windows 8 as well. So if you want to get started or you want your best shot at getting onto the console, I implore you to take a look at building these games for Windows 8, tying in Connect integration or even SmartGlass there. And I think you'll be quite impressed with what we have. All of this is available in the developer portal for GDNP, Game Developer Network. You can get to by applying for ID at Xbox. So I'm going down to slide 8. And see, you have a number of resources here. So the first one is the official page. So that still works, xbox.com. And then this is in English, but obviously you can change it to just about any other language you'd want. But I implore you to go to xbox.com/dev. We also have a very, very active Facebook group, Xbox One Indie Devs, where many people on the ID Xbox team will go in and see what's going on, they'll interact with fans, they'll answer questions. But it's a lot really used for developers to kind of help one another out in a public space. We also have private forums for developers who are in the ID at Xbox program, where they can go in, ask questions for things that are perhaps under NDA. If you're looking for the ID at Xbox team on Twitter, you can find them at ID_Xbox. More info, my peer in Washington, D.C., Shahed Chowdhury, has wakeupandcode.com/xb1, where we have quite a few posts on the Xbox One program. And also at my site, davevoyles.com, you can see I have many posts illustrating exactly how to get on the platform. I'll walk you through the application process, what the team is often looking for, and I continue to update that page. For developers who came from Xbox 360 and are looking for the route to Xbox One, well, we don't have XNA just yet, but we do have the DirectX toolkit, which was created by several of the members who were formerly on the XNA team. So it is still C++, but the calls look very, very similar to what you have seen on Xbox One, on XNA. So if you're familiar with XNA and you want to bring your games over, I would highly suggest you take a look at that, have a better understanding of where we're going and what we're doing. Again, it's all very exciting to be working with Xbox One, 360, and Windows 8 at this point, because we're really starting to converge everything and try to build a full picture for game developers in the future. So at Build, we'll have quite a bit more to announce GDC was really kind of a way to wet the palate of all developers and get them on board with what we're doing. Also, we're looking to highlight and promote what developers are doing. So at GDC, we brought quite a few of them onto the show floor and hosted them at the Microsoft lobby. So when you first walked into the venue, we had many developers on display from our independent ID program to highlight what they were doing, where they were coming from. We have them from all over the world. In fact, we had a nice developer from Brazil showing off one of his titles. But we even have students or recent college graduates showing off their titles. So ages and experiences all over the place. Some people who have worked in gaming or AAA for 20 years are bringing their games to the program as well. So it is a great time to be on board with the program. Moreover, last year, ID at Xbox had done a tour across the U.S. where they'd gone to several cities such as Seattle and Chicago and had basically a day of ID at Xbox where we got to meet the team and you got to go over some of the technical parts of the program, how to apply, ways to write games, and best use cases. So Chris Charles announced during GDC that we'll be doing about 15 more of those. So you go to the ID at Xbox page again and check out when the dates will be announced. It'll be worldwide, so whether or not it happen in Brazil, I don't know quite yet. But if you reach out to me, I'd be more than glad to help you out with that. So in closing here, I want you to understand that we still have many routes for independent developers. You can still write games for the Xbox 360 using XNA or C#. It's $100 each year to get into the Creators Club or Xbox Live Indie Games program. But your best bet at this point is to go for the Xbox One route and apply for ID at Xbox. So we can get some visibility with the team. They can look through your resume or portfolio and get an idea of what you're working on. Furthermore, I would implore you to look at the Windows 10 developer kit when it comes out at some point this year. And additionally, you can work with your local technical evangelists. So those are my peers who have the same role, and we're located throughout the world. So you can go to the Microsoft Tech Advisors site, fill it into your search engine. You can easily find the advisor or technical evangelist in your area, as well as the specialty. So it's our job to work with students, startups, and game developers in our areas. So please, by all means, reach out to us, and we'd love to help you out. We also have the BizSpark program, which is our initiative for startups and gamers. Now, what that does is it offers things like $150 each month in cloud credits to pay for your Azure. So Azure can be used for things like mobile services, push notifications, leaderboards, cloud saves for your games. Ties in very easily with middleware like Unity. Additionally, we have things like Unity VS, so that allows you to debug your Unity title inside of Visual Studio. BizSpark also includes Visual Studio Ultimate for developers. So you get the latest versions of Visual Studio completely for free, and you get 5 copies of each. You also have Office, you have Windows 8, and soon to be Windows 10, and you have free developer licenses, as well as additional marketing support with Microsoft. Finally, we have a seeding program for devices. So, for example, if you want to create a game or an application for Windows Phone or the tablet, we have devices that we can then send out to you for a 90-day period for you to test your game or application on, and then send it back to us when you're done. So our initiative and our goal right now is to make the process as seamless and easy as possible for developers, and specifically that of game developers, as easy as possible. So again, if you're interested, feel free to reach out for any of us to ask more about BizSpark, ID at Xbox, or gaming on Windows 10 platform as a whole. I'm very easy to find. You can find me on Twitter at Dave Voyles. My website is davevoyles.com. And feel free to reach out and say hello. Thank you.